and we're going to start this evening in child's pose. So depending on where you're tight, you might want to place the block underneath the back of your buttocks if that's a little bit tight, or you might want it underneath your forehead. So either way, just allow yourself to be as comfortable as you can, and then do your best to bring your hands into a position where it's easy for your shoulders, which might be bringing them sort of more in line with your head. You might be able to take them all the way to the feet. We're only going to be here for a couple of minutes. Fairly narrow gait through the knees, so we're not spreading out wide. You want to be able to compress the diaphragm a little bit. Try and breathe in through that area and get some expansion into the ribs as the diaphragm forces our bodies to move around for us. Now we'll start to bring the hands forwards again and lift ourselves up so that we can just reposition the knees, taking advantage of as much of the mat as we can. And move the block out to the side, take the hands forwards, and then sink the body down through the gap that we've just made. Trying again to keep those shoulders soft, even though the arms are extending out. Preferably keeping the elbows from the ground. And then slowly lifting back up. We'll come up onto all fours and take that knees back underneath the hips. And we'll come into melting out. So we'll take the hands a little wider than the shoulders. Ease the hands forwards and sink the chest down to the floor carefully. You can let the head come to the ground. And try turning the armpits out to the side a little bit. You'll notice that you can retract the shoulder blades in without actually thinking about doing that. Just thinking about turning the armpits out a little bit to the side. And get a little bit more stretch into that upper and middle back. And slowly walk the hands back and push the hips a little further towards the back of the mat. So it just helps take the weight out of the arms as we bring ourselves back up onto all fours. We're going to come into saddle pose. So we're going to bring the knees together and take the feet wide. And as I sit back, I'm going to take that blocking portrait mode and stick it underneath the sitting bones. Remember, if you need more height, you can sit on the end of the bolster, or if you have a brick available, make sure that that's covering both sitting bones rather than down the coccyx line, which would leave you a little bit wobbly. Okay, take the arms out wide now and just bring the arms into that eagle pose that we're used to doing. So I'm going to bring the left arm across and right arm over the top, bending at the elbows, and then bring the palms together as best you can and drop the elbows in towards the chest. And when you breathe in, see if you can direct your breath into the back of your shoulders to see if you can get a little bit more capacity and stretch into the top of the lungs. That'll stretch out the shoulders for you and also your chest. So we'll be in this seated position for about 4 minutes in total. If you do find that you need to start high, but coming down is an option, you can move around in and out of the pose to just optimize where your body allows you to go. Then to release the arms back out and then float them across the opposite way. So that left arm is on top. And the immediacy of coming into the pose, you'll kind of naturally feel a little bit different through the shoulders. So take the time to breathe back into the top of the lungs, back of the shoulders, opening up that space. Just using the power of your breath to work for you. So we've got about another minute of being here. Plenty of time to let those elbows really sink into the chest. You might even want to close your eyes as we sit here and breathe slowly. Memorial. Slowly release the arms and use the hands to press down a little bit so we can move slowly out. Again, we'll move the block out to the side. We'll come onto our bellies for Sphinx pose. So just lining up the elbows to shoulder distance apart. You slowly untangle your legs. Take your time. You need to let those legs open out nice and easy. I'll start off from that saddle pose. I'll keep the toes tucked under for a little bit, just to let the knees kind of sort themselves out. You can have the palms facing down or the hands facing in. You can even bring the hands together so the palms are in prayer. Some people like that. What I would say is if you're going to take that position, just be careful that your elbows don't slide out to the side too much. When you're ready, you're going to untuck the toes. You're going to find a little bit of extension into the legs. Let the belly relax. Let the chest sink downwards so the shoulders lift towards the sky. It's slightly different to them being jammed forwards around your ears in this pose. It's a subtle difference, but if you can, try to let the shoulders lift up rather than forwards. generally, that's caused by having the elbows a little bit further back than is ideal. If they're just a little bit forwards, I tend to draw the shoulders upwards a little bit more. There's a relationship in that positioning. Move from here. We'll be coming back into this to play again in a while. We'll bring the hands underneath the chin, bring the feet back onto the center line, and we'll take half frog, the pose that we know well, taking the right leg out to the side, shin following the line of the mat, toes pointing out. Head turns in whichever direction you feel comfortable. I think it's kind of generally accepted that if you turn to the knee that's out to the side, it's going to be a little more comfy, but it's not necessarily right for everybody. So have a little play with that. Any movements, very gentle and soft. And focusing on letting the groin open and the hips sink down to the floor. Okay, we'll bring that leg gently back in. Slide the foot down the center line of the mat. Take the feet out, get distance apart again, and we'll lift up into the Sphinx pose again. So this is an opportunity for anyone that feels that it's within their body to easily press the hands down into the floor and lift the body up, starting to take the elbows away from the ground. Now, if you're able to do that, you're still going to let the shoulders roll back and the chest forwards. And then, if it's possible, walk the fingers back a little bit further. You need to be in a position where it's comfortable in your lower back. We are going to compress that part of the spine, but not at the point where we start to grit our teeth or we're starting to have regrets about how high we've lifted. So it may be that you're just able to take the hands away from the floor and hold that for a minute or so if they're a long way out, like mine are. Or you might be able to walk them in a lot closer, in which case leverage and the amount of time that you're able to be in the pose will extend. If you feel you want to come back down, you just bring the elbows back down to the floor. And then we'll let the chest come to the ground, elbows out to the side. Once you've arrived, you're just going to wriggle the hips around a little bit. And then I'm going to take my left hand out 90 degrees to the body, palms facing down and up onto the fingertips. Right hand comes underneath the right shoulder. I'm going to let myself roll onto my left side, walking the left fingers out a little bit, let the head drop down to the floor, and just stack one leg on top of the other. That's the first of our prone shoulder stretches. And lay back down onto the ground and just wriggle those fingers out a little bit. Bring that left hand back in. And we'll start with the opposite side. Walking the right hand out 90 degrees to the body. And then when you're ready, just walking the fingers out as you turn yourself onto your right side. Just being very careful to move slowly. Let the shoulder accept the stretch around the front of the shoulder. That's where I kind of feel it across the, sort of almost working more into the chest than the shoulder. But I do appreciate for some people, you'll be feeling it in different places to me. So you might be feeling it everywhere equally, or it might just be in the back of the joint. Wherever it is, respect time and breath. And we'll slowly let the chest roll back down to the floor. Bring the hands back underneath. Bring the feet together. And this time we'll take the left leg out to the side, 90 degrees, for the other half of the frog pose. As they say, it is half frog pose, so something on both sides, it's a whole frog. And just letting the groins relax, maybe visualizing the joint opening, thinking about the muscles lengthening on the inside, drawing and squishing up a little bit on the top side. Trying to let go of any feelings of hanging on. Let's start to bring the foot back up. And just wriggling up the hips a little bit. So we're going to come into the second prone shoulder pose where we cross the arms over. So this is where lifting up and bringing the bolster underneath your chest or a rolled up blanket could assist a little bit. Taking the hands once you're in position and move your props to where you want them to be, directly out in front. And then just lifting high enough, we're going to take the left hand out 90 degrees to the right underneath, and then walk the right hand over towards the left side so that we get the arms 180 degrees apart. Palms are facing down. We try to get the straightest arms we can. So you do want to walk the fingers out as far to the side as you can. Now, some people can find a resting place where they can drop their chin into the top of the bicep. And that means that the throat has got a little bit of space. So breathing and swallowing are relatively easy. Some people necks are a bit longer and they tend to hang over a little bit, so you might have to lift every now and again. Just try and find a comfortable space for yourself where you don't feel impeded in the breath. We're looking for relaxation and recovery and stretch. So anything that draws us away from that, we need to try and move around and adapt really. I have seen people actually use a yoga brick standing on end and then just resting their forehead on there so that they're quite considerably high away from the ground. But it just gives them a space to breathe, which is important. Now, to come out of this, we need to draw the abdominal muscles in as we exhale and use the lower back muscles to lift a little bit of weight out of the arms. We don't necessarily draw ourselves up very high, but we give ourselves a position where we can take the right hand out, then press that palm into the floor. That's so we can get a little bit more lift, and we can take the left hand out gently. Whilst we're here, we'll take another breath in, slide that right arm out, and then walk the left arm across. Again, getting ourselves as close to the 180 as we can. A little bit of wriggling around in the shoulders and the chest department. And then we'll attempt to come out of this again. So draw the belly in, get a little bit of lift with those lower back muscles. Start to walk the left hand out in front. Press the hand to get a little bit of extra lift. Hand comes out. And then as you draw your chest down to the floor, bring your hands slowly down towards the bottom of the ribs. And then we'll use the back muscles a little bit and the hands in conjunction with each other to lift up. Now, coming onto all fours, I'm just going to tuck the toes underneath, lean back onto the heels, keep my hands on the ground in front of me. I'll lift up into a forward fold, so knees come away from the ground first, and then lift the hips up, keeping the ribs and the thighs together, and just dangling over the hips. The legs will open out as much as they can do. We haven't done any real work to open up the hamstrings, so I'm not going to expect miracles from my legs this evening. You might naturally have longer hamstrings than I, and you're in a straighter position, that's fine. Keeping the fingertips on the floor is necessary, and then you can have a little wiggle through the toes and release them a little bit. You want the feet parallel and about hip distance apart. And have a sense of your spine just hanging out of the pelvis. So giving into the weight of your body. Okay, I'm going to walk the fingertips forwards, bring myself back down onto my knees, and I'm going to bring the knees together, allow myself to take my infamous block out to the side. The hands forwards, I'm going to draw my left knee through towards my hands, then slide my left foot over to the right side of the mat and bring the thighs back on top of each other, so cross-legged. Allow the feet to go as wide as they comfortably can out to the side, and then to slide myself back into a seated posture and place the block underneath my body. So just easing my way in. And seeing how that feels. Now, if that doesn't feel great in the hips, knees, or ankle, if there's any particular sharpness to any of those joints sitting in here, then allow yourself to come into the half shoelace, which is where the bottom leg would actually be lengthened out in front. And I would suggest, if you're going to do that, actually coming off of the block so that your sitting bone, the back of your leg and your heel are flatter to the floor. It's less stress on the back of the knee that's out in front. Now, we can do the opposite side in a moment, but we will need that strap to be fairly close by as well. So when we move the next time round, if it's not super close, you might want to plan ahead a little bit. We're moving towards the position where we're not able to get our hand through the gap between the thighs. Let's start lifting up now. So we're leaning forwards, walk the hands through, allow ourselves to untangle the legs, just drawing that left leg forwards, then bring it back out. Bringing the knees back underneath the hips and on the center line, knees together. And then we can draw the right foot through, cross over, slide back, one thigh on top of the other. So you can get to kind of jiggle around and get the knees and thighs and hips where you want them to be. And then start to think about taking the feet out wide. And again, very gently sitting back, taking your time to see how it feels in the joints. Remember, we want to be sitting on the block, so might have traveled around a little bit in the lift So again, just replacing that into the right place. And then we sit up nice and gently and relax. Now we'll be crossing and uncrossing 3 times in all to each side. Pardon me, got hiccups. This first effort, sitting in cow face legs, is just to make sure that we're happy in the lower portions of the body before we take it further. We'll start to lift again. Untangle the legs. Bring ourselves back to our starting position, so knees together. Left leg comes through, crosses over, wiggle and jiggle. Take the feet wide. Still take a little bit of time to go back. As the body opens up, you might be in a slightly different position. And this time we're going to allow ourselves to hinge from the hips and fold the body out. So it's a slow move down. Try and think of lengthening your chest forwards. Let the hands come with you. Once you've got as far as you can, then you can start to let the spine round. So we're looking towards getting the chest and the thighs to meet. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. Maybe they will and won't on different sides. And then we'll start to lift back up. We'll draw ourselves forwards. Untangle the legs. And move into the second side. And relax off to settle, get the sitting bones in position before we start to lean forward. So I'm almost drawing the chest forwards, like I'm extending the chest up and out, dropping the torso out along that thigh, letting the hands come out for a little bit of support and balance. And then when I find the full extent of my body's ability to lean forwards, I can then start to round the spine gently down. And we can start to lift back up again. So we'll take the left leg forwards for the last time. Widen out. Sit down gently as ever. And this time I'm going to draw the strap with me. So left leg hopefully is on top. I'm going to take the strap and the buckle into the left hand and wrap that round a couple of times. We'll lift that arm up towards the sky and let the strap come behind me. I'm going to bend the elbow and just draw the elbow up and into the center line of my body a little bit more in that direction. So letting the hand come towards the nape of the neck. And dropping the right hand down, I'm going to turn the palm backwards, thumb points down towards the floor, just move it back slowly, gentle bend of the elbow, and then find the strap and walk the hands together. It's an end position. I'm going to draw very lightly my bottom elbow down and my top elbow up. Ideally, the neck would be in a position where it's vertical, following the line of the spine. Appreciate that for some of us, that might not happen readily. It gets a little bit congested, the arm kind of presses into the neck and pushes it forwards, etc. So allow yourself, if that's the case, to have a little bit more space, take the hands a little bit further apart. You still can get the stretch. You've still got the mobility and coming into the muscles when you do the stretch behind you. A little bit of flexibility in the joint perhaps isn't there immediately, but we need to work with the muscles that we've got first of all, and then they can work into the joints afterwards. This particular shoulder stretch. Not the case for all stretches, but this one, it kind of works that way. And we'll start to release. Drop strap down to the side. Let myself lift up. Hands come forwards. Angle the legs, reset myself onto the center line. Take the right foot forwards for the last time. Lie on top of thigh, wriggle and jiggle. Ease your way back. And this time, hopefully with that right leg on top, we'll take the strap into the right hand. So remember, we've got buckle end high, so you know where it is. So we take the arm up, strap comes behind, we drop the hand down, and then I'm just going to assist the elbow more into the center line. That's where you can start to get the squishing of the neck forwards. So if it does happen, you just let the elbow drop back out again. You slide the left hand back gently. Give the shoulder time to open. Find the strap. Start to walk the fingers together with the aid of the strap. So we can visualize them getting a little closer as well. And then without it being overly tight, you start to draw one elbow up and one elbow down. Again, we can release. And we can drop the strap out to the side. We can untangle the legs for the last time. And this time we'll just do that by simply taking the legs out in front. Now we're going to draw the hands behind about shoulder distance apart. So we're leaning back a little bit. And then I'm going to press the shoulders down, squeeze the shoulder blades together, press through the hands, flex the feet back towards myself. Keeping my chin in towards my chest, I'm going to lift my chest as high to the sky as I can to transition from yin to yang. Lengthen the heels away a little bit so I can feel the leg muscles doing some work as well. And I'm going to release, bring myself back up. I'm going to simply cross the ankles over and roll forwards, moving the block out to the side a little bit, coming up onto all fours. So however you get there will be excellent. I'm going to take the little finger and the thumb as far apart as I can, have the knees underneath the hips, and then roll the toes underneath, roll the shoulders back, and lift myself into down dog. You might need to adjust the feet out a little closer or further away. Ideally, the heels are off of the ground and the heels are hiding behind the ankles. We can draw the belly in a little bit. Want to see if we can open those shoulders up so we're letting the chest sink down and back. To assist that, we are lifting the hips up and back as well. Now we'll walk the hands towards the toes into a forward fold. As I arrive, I'll soften the knees a lot. Let the ribs really sink down on the thighs and take the hands forwards and out in front of me for balance, lining up with the torso, palms facing, and then drive through the legs to lift up. Then moving through a chair pose. I bring the hands down to the side of the body. Bring the hands back in towards the heart as I breathe in. Draw the belly in. Fold gently down to the floor. Fingers come to the ground. This time I'm going to bend the knees a little bit and ragdoll out. So round spine, draw the belly in, exhale all the way up. Lift the head and the shoulders last, and take the arms out wide again and up to the sky. We'll come back through again, gently folding over. And soften the knees, ragdoll gently back out, nice and smoothly. Inhaling high. We'll bring the hands through the heart. Now this time as we come down to the floor, we'll walk back towards the front of the mat with the hands. So we come back into our down dog position. And then from there, we'll let the knees come to the floor. Sit back into child's pose. Hands to stretch forwards. Turn the armpits out to the side of the mat again. Belly drawn in. Bend your tailbone towards the back of the mat a little bit. So it's more of a contraction than perhaps a movement. And release. Bring ourselves forwards into that Sphinx pose position. Now this time you want to keep the belly drawn in and make sure your elbows are a little forwards of your shoulders. And take the left hand then and bring it behind the right elbow. So my forearm is across the mat underneath my chest. I'm going to press away from the floor through the forearm and press the shoulder down into the floor as well. So get as much lift as I can. And then I'll bend the right leg, the right hand back, find the toes, and assist the heel towards my sitting bone. I want to keep lifting up through the chest, a big stretch through the front thigh. I'm going to draw the knee towards the bottom of the mat. Try to roll as little as possible to the sides. That's kind of where the body's going to get thrown. So press down and lift up, keep the belly drawn in a little bit. Not a terribly long hold, but it's definitely effective. And then we'll release. Gently bring the other forearm across underneath the body. And then bend in the left leg, the left hand back. Try and draw the elbow to the sky as you press your hand down onto the boot laces of your foot. Heel towards the sitting bone. And keep pressing down through the forearms, quite strong. And if you don't quite get the right place on your elbow, you can end up sitting on a nerve a little bit. So if you need to come out for that reason, then please do. And then we'll release. And bring ourselves all the way down to the floor. Now wriggle the hips out a little bit. And then bring the hands down to the bottom of the ribs again, roll the shoulders back, press into the floor as we exhale to lift ourselves up. We'll draw the knees forwards so we can sit onto the heels. Move the block underneath as we take the feet out to the side. And ta-da, we are sitting back on our bums, legs out in front. We'll slowly draw the left leg in and bring that underneath the body to the right hip, so the knee points forwards, and we'll bring the right foot over with the knee high, close into the body. Tilt the pelvis forwards to get the spine nice and long. Left arm up, rotate over to the right side, we'll counterlever the arm and the leg. Take the opposite hand behind, and if it's comfortable in your neck, you glance towards the rear shoulder, the back of your mat. And then we'll release from there. And same for the other side. And we'll release from there as well. To draw my heels in towards the center line and the feet and the soles coming together. So different versions that we can run with this. We can take this into a forward fold, or we can sit upright. It's really your choice where you want to go. If you're going to sit upright and bring the soles of the feet together and then slide the feet in closer and take the hands around the ankles. If you're able to, you could hook little toe and big toe, but that kind of depends on the length of your limbs more than anything else. You want to be sitting up really tall and just letting the knees drop down a little bit. With that, you might find that the feet actually can open out a fraction. There is a way where you can place the thumbs inside the soles of the feet and then turn the feet out a little bit, so you really are starting to assist opening out. The other option is to take your feet a little bit further, lift up out of the pelvis and sink yourself forwards into a forward fold. So you decide which you want to play with, and then we're going to hold this for a minute or so. Now, if you're in this version with me down, you do want to try and widen the shoulders out and draw them away from the ears, which might mean that bringing the arms inside might be a little bit more comfy than having them outside. Some people who are close to the floor like to actually bring their hands underneath the legs and bring the forearms down to the ground, and then use their hands to press their feet together. If you're in that position, once you've checked in, allow yourself to widen the shoulders out. I do find that keeping the head a little bit more in line with the spine in this forward fold version is more comfortable than letting the head drop. If you let the head drop, you start to tighten the fascia lines in the upper back even more. And they kind of tighten up with the lower back muscles and then into the hips and the legs. So you could inadvertently be making it less comfortable just by dropping the head a couple of inches. Again, small details. If you are in the forward fold, you keep the belly drawn to the spine. Give yourself plenty of space. Release again. Let ourselves come back up, and we'll come into our final relaxation. So if you do have a bolster and you want to use that, you can bring that underneath the back of the knees. We'll reiterate, as I've probably said many times before, make sure you feel stay on the ground if you've got a bolster underneath the back of the legs. And use the block for a little bit of a pillow. Use the hands for support. If that's not good in your back, then you would simply roll onto your side and then bring yourself to the floor. So we'll move into Shavasana. Hands out to the side, legs wide and rolled open. Soften the jaw, close the eyes softly, and breathe. Begin to stretch those fingers and toes. Position the ankles to begin to move so we can connect all the limbs back up. Taking a deeper breath, use that to stretch out. And carefully draw the knees back in towards the body. The gentlest of hugs, whatever feels appropriate in your body in terms of the easy movement. Just gets you a little bit more back in the room. There for space and time that you're occupying. We'll slowly roll onto our right side. Take one breath at the bottom. Use the exhale to lift up slowly. And gently bring ourselves back into an easy sitting posture. Let the body lengthen. And bring our hands in towards our heart. And take a breath in. As we begin to exhale, we'll let the head bow, draw the belly in, and let the body soften towards the floor to seal our practice. Inhaling, we'll build the body back up with the breath, lifting the head, eyes eventually opening. Namaste. Thank you very much for joining me for this evening's class. Have a lovely week ahead. Take care. See you soon.